All right, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Tonight we are learning Leilu Nishmat Esther Bela Bat Rab Zev, as well as Leilu Nishmat Rabbi Avram ben Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Rabbi Avram. Okay, so actually, I need to make a short announcement. Before we actually begin, I know we spoke about this before about the organization Maasai, which again, I'm not going to go too much into it, but we just revamped the entire thing. So you guys should really check out the website because it's really phenomenal. The website is, the idea behind it is that there are unfortunately people that are struggling with infertility, couples that are married and they have a hard time having children, and under the initiative of A Time, we have this phenomenal program where you can learn a Mishnah to help a neshama come down. Mishnah, neshama is the same letters. You could help that neshama come down. When a person passes away, one of the things that they do for the soul is that they learn Mishnayos. Now we kind of flip the script. In order to bring the soul down, we're learning Mishnayos. It is super easy, super intuitive. Like, just look at the website. First of all, let me just spell it for you guys. It's MEIMASAI.org. And you could look at it. It's very, very intuitive. We're gonna have their videos. We're gonna have their it's a phenomenal thing to get to get involved in there, and everything's on there. It tells you how many people we have signed up, how many Mishnayos are being learned. Besides the fact that it's super easy and simple to do, literally like it takes me a minute or something every day to learn. Really short, sweet, and quick. But besides that, you are utilizing your learning to help someone else, which is something that most people do not have the ability and the opportunity to do. So I strongly recommend everybody that is listening to this to not only sign up, but also to share with your friends and family. It's something that's very simple, very easy, and it's something that will bring not only tremendous merit to those couples that are struggling with infertility, but it also gives them this, this emotional push that people are caring about them, and people are going through some sort of difficulty, and we're here to help. Not everybody is able to help financially. Not everybody is able to help, let's say emotionally, but we are able to help spiritually, and that's what we are doing over here. So again, everybody should check out the website MEIMASAI.org. I'll put it down in the notes as well. But really share it. It's an important thing. Anybody that you get to share and that is signed up because of you, that's all your schusim. This is the easiest merit grab that you can possibly get. Okay, so now let's jump into. We're coming up to Pesach. And it's a very hectic, every holiday is a very hectic time, right? It's for the women, for the men, everybody's running around doing it. And every so often we have to stop. We have to take a step back and be like, yes, we're doing all this, but like, what's the purpose? The purpose is not just for the food. The purpose is not just for the wine, the matzah, and how good and how thin and how blah, blah, blah. Those are all nice and amazing things. And again, we thank the wives and the women for literally putting their sweat and tears into this. But that's not the main focus. There's obviously an important spiritual aspect for it. So we have to take a little bit of a step back and kind of assess the situation and be like, okay, we're coming into the Pesach holiday, the Passover holiday. Like, what is our focus? What are we gaining? What can we take away from it? Like, everything in life has the opportunity for you to just like cruise through it, or you have the ability to gain from it and change from it and improve from it. So there's a famous saying, the Chazal tell us that just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God took us out of Mitzrayim, God will take you out of your own Mitzrayim. Meaning that everybody has something that they're dealing with, that they're struggling with, that they're going through, that they want to overcome, they want to become. It could be a personal thing, it could be something with your character trait, it could be something with your parnasa, it could be something with your your shalom bayis or lack thereof, or it could be something with the children, or it could be something with finding the zivug or children for that matter. Everybody has something that they're going through. And there's something there's like a golden ticket that is going on in Pesach that most people fail to grasp, fail to connect, and fail to really capitalize on the opportunity. And that is that it's a very simple concept that God took us out of Egypt. God will take you out of your Egypt. What's your Egypt? Whatever it is that you're struggling with. So the question is like, so how do we tap into it? Like, what are we supposed to do? So Reb Shimshon Pincus brings down there's two conditions that were needed when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim. And those same two conditions are what needed nowadays if you want to get out of your own Egypt, of your own Mitzrayim. So the number one is Ratzon, number two is Emunah, and we'll explain it. Emunah, everybody is aware of, that you have to have the faith, the belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could go and could take you out. Ratzon is really the focus that we really want to like double click into and zoom in, and that is, Ratzon is your desire. You have to have the desire to go out. So let's try to explain it. In Egypt, in Mitzrayim, 1/5, 80%, only 20% of the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, left Egypt. 80% of the Jewish people did not leave Egypt. Unfortunately, they died in the plague of darkness, in Makas Choshech. And the question is, what did they do wrong? Like, what was their sin? It wasn't Avodah Zarah. It wasn't Giler. You go through all the Averas, like the ones that got redeemed, maybe have been part of that. But there was no one aspect. Be like, okay, this is the reason why they didn't go out, and this is the reason why they did go out. Meaning as like a standalone, this is a very obvious, very serious sin, and this is the reason why. The reason is, explains Reb Shimshon Pincus, is that the 80% that didn't leave Mitzrayim was because they did not want to go out of Mitzrayim. They did not want to go out of Egypt. Now the question we have to ask over here, but wait a minute. Are you telling me that there was slavery, there was abuse, there was murder, there was who knows what, and there was an opportunity to leave Egypt, and only 20% took that opportunity because only 20% really wanted it? What was the 80% doing? The 80% were like, no, we're okay. Why were, you're second-class citizen at best. Even if you have money, even if you have connect, you're like a low, why wouldn't anybody just want to run out of the abuse that they were dealing with for so many years? And the answer is that we have to understand what is leaving Mitzrayim, what is leaving Egypt. When you look at a piece of garment, let's say a jacket, and the jacket has a hole in it. And now there's two ways that you're able to fix that hole. You're able to make a patch and kind of patch it up. And the way that it's going to look is that you're going to see it's a patch. You're going to see the stitches. You're going to see the line. But if you really want to make it look brand new, you got to cut out by the seam. You got to take out a big, a big chunk of it, and then put in a fresh piece, and it kind of blends in, and it looks like there was nothing ever that was ripped in it. It's kind of a cut and reshape as opposed to patching. Now let's try to understand that. When somebody wants to improve themselves, let's say somebody has an anger issue and they want to improve on their anger issue. So they could try to work around, make sure the next time that I get upset, I don't get angry. Meaning that they kind of try to put, and this is where most human beings kind of live. We have an issue that we want to deal with, and we want to fix, and we want to improve. So we kind of patch and band-aid and fix and, plug in things together and try to hold everything in together with a spiritual duct tape or some sort of patches that we're just trying to cover up the system. That doesn't change who you are in an essence, as an essence of your being. What it does is it kind of trying to fixes it and patches up. There's a husband and wife that are not getting along, and the husband has complaints about the wife, and the wife has complaints about the husband, and they each try to okay, let me try to fix it, let me try to patch it up, and they kind of tiptoe around, they patch it up. That's nice, that's great, that may be successful, but that's not changing who you are. Meaning that's not changing your essence. You're just duct taping the issue to try to go and cover it up and be able to go and move on. There is an aspect of literally taking and cutting it apart and not patching it up, but reshaping it. What Yetzias Mitzrayim was it was taking the Jewish nation, and it wasn't like improving here, improving there, like patching things up. It was reshaping the Jewish nation as they knew it back then. It was a complete restructuring from a ground up foundational building that they were just restructuring everything. And this is what Yetzias Mitzrayim is. This is what going out of Mitzrayim is. This is a very difficult concept, and that's why it was done by what? None other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was done on that God took us out of Egypt. It wasn't through a malach, it wasn't through an angel, it was only through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we face the same problems when we're going and we want to go out of our personal Yetzias Mitzrayim, out of our personal suffering, out of our personal troubles that we're trying to get out. And the issues is that most people don't want to change. They don't want to change their personality. They kind of want to like just put the patches on it. And this is the issue that happened with 80% of the Jewish people when they were in Egypt. God gave them this opportunity. I'm going to take you out. Everything's going to be A-okay. But we got to reshape you. We got to restructure. We're building you up, ground up, brand new. And there was 80% of the Jewish people, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, that even though they suffered greatly, even though they were oppressed, they were enslaved, and they were tortured, they still, for reasons that may be hard to comprehend, they lacked the desire to change. They lacked the desire, and there was actually two aspects. Number one, they lacked the desire to change. Number two, they weren't convinced that such a thing is possible. They weren't convinced that they had the ability to do it. And this is what Pesach comes. When Pesach comes, you have the ability to revamp yourself. You have the ability to get out of all the troubles that you are going at and completely rebuild yourself from ground up. But you need these two aspects. You need to have that desire to change, and you need to be convinced that it's possible to change. And obviously, you need to have the emunah that it's going to need. You're going to need HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself to go and help you. Let's try to explain it this way. There was a simple man that was watching from across the street. There was a building that was getting demolished. And he didn't have a job. He was unemployed. He was sitting there all day watching the workers. And he watched the demolition team come down. There was an existing structure of 10 stories. And they wanted to put a 15-story structure. So there's a demolition team that comes out. They break down this entire building. And then they build up 15 stories. So they went from 10 stories to 15 stories. And he was very bothered and troubled. He considered himself an intellectual. And he's like, I don't understand. It's like, what's going on over here? Like, this makes no sense. If you wanted to build a 15-story structure, you had 10 stories already. Just build another 5 on top of that. Like, why are you taking demolition is a massive project, and then you need like the whole thing is like is so much more work, so much more expensive. It doesn't make any sense. So he couldn't hold himself back anymore, and he decides he's going to go down over there, and he's going to speak to the contractor, and he's going to speak to everybody that is willing to talk to him. And he goes over to the head contractor, and he says, "Listen, I live across the street. I've been watching you guys, what you're doing. I gotta ask you. He considered himself a businessman of sorts, and he said, what's going on? You wanted to build a 15-story structure, a 15-story building. You had 10 stories already built. Just add another 5. Why did you take everything down just to put another 5 on top of what you had existing?" And the engineer smiled at him and explained, says, listen, the building that was put here with 10 stories, the foundation was not strong enough to hold 15 stories. It was only strong enough to hold 10 stories. In order to make the building be able to withstand, to uphold, and to be able to continue surviving, we needed to make a really strong foundation, and then we would be able to build it up higher. And he said, think about it from a perspective of the owner. The owner had a certain amount of units, a certain amount of apartments in this building, and he wanted to make more money. He had the ability to build more. It was worth it for him to break everything down, to go deep underground, build a strong foundation, and then build everything up. And financially, it made a lot more sense to him. And this is what happens, when we go through a restructuring. And I'll explain it like this way. It's very, very easy to understand. Sometimes people go through something very difficult, and people, no one's blaming, no one's pointing any fingers. People ask questions on God. Be like, what are you doing? Like, why? And then, somebody comes and tells them, oh, it's all for the best. It's going to make you a better person. And it gives them all those answers, the correct answers, but still not something they want to hear. And it gives them all that information. And they respond back and be like, if God wanted me to become a better or a kapara, but he could have done that without destroying everything and, and having such a serious test. Make me have a small test. And the answer is as follows. Says, you are, before this test, before this difficulty that you're going, before the suffering that you're going through, you are a 10-story building. God wanted to put you into a 15-story building. He wanted to make you a semi-skyscraper. He wanted to make you a better person. But in order to do that, your foundation needed to change. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a test, put it in a situation that we had to restructure and pour new foundation inside, and this would allow us to grow even higher. This is the concept that we have to understand about Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim, to becoming a new person, is changing the foundation. It's restructuring of who you are. You want to change, but you have to believe that you have that ability. Every single one of us has the ability to become a different person. Restructure and become completely different. I want to share with you something that I heard from Rabbi Daniel Gladstein. And it quotes the marror that when someone is visiting, let's say someone's visiting you, and you go and you escort this person out. When you escort this person out of your home, your apartment, you take a few steps, there is a special blessing that kind of protects this person on its travels. Now we have to understand, what does that mean? You go, you're melave your guest, you're escorting your guest out, and because of that, all of a sudden your guest is going to be traveling for 10 hours. You take 3 steps out with them, and all of a sudden they're protected for the next 10 hours. How does that work? So the Maharal explains that the host had a intent, had a mindset, had a desire that they wanted their guest to be protected. So they took a few steps out, walking them out, being melave them outside of out of their house. Now, they couldn't go and they couldn't travel the 10 hours that their guest is traveling, but they took a few steps out. But because, explains the Maharal, the intent and the desire, the thoughts of the host was, I want my guest to be protected. Let me take a few steps out with them. Then that gives a power, a koyach, that until this guest goes into their, to their destination, they have that extra level of protection. Which means, and this is through a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 145, verse 19, Ratzon yere'av ya'aseh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the Ratzon, the will of those who fear him. Now, let's try to understand this. We know that actions are important. What we do is very important. We also know that words are very important. And we have also know that even thoughts are important. But what we're discussing today is not only the action, not only the words, not only your thoughts, your desires has an effect. What you want, your Ratzon, has an effect on and implications on reality. It changes reality. Now, we see this also, and another example is Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went and he obviously he was a Navi, he was speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he was a prophet, he was speaking to God, and he separated from his wife. And Miriam was very taken aback by this. She's like, why are you separating from your wife? Miriam, Moshe Rabbeinu's sister, and Aaron, Moshe Rabbeinu's brother, also, they had prophecies from God. They didn't separate from their spouse. So Miriam goes and says, what, are you holier than us? Like, what? Obviously, in hindsight, we look at it, we know Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was a lot higher than all other prophets, but Miriam said, why are you better than us? Like, we all have prophecy, we didn't separate from our spouse, why did you separate from their spouse? Now, there's a phenomenal question. There are 3 things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu that he did, that he was right for doing. One of them was, he separated from his wife, and God said, you did right, you did correct. Yafe Asisa, you did good. So the question is, so then what's going on? Why is Miriam speaking about Moshe that he's doing something that it appears to be wrong if God himself came and said you did right? So the answer is, we look in the Gemara Makos, a Gemara that we mentioned before. The way that a person wants to go heaven will direct you. Meaning, whatever desire you have, whatever goal you want, God will direct you towards that goal. An example of this is Bilam. Bilam, when he was going and he was, wanted to go and curse the Jewish people, he goes over to God and he's like, "Hey, God, can I go curse the Jewish people?" And God said, "No, don't go." And then he asked again, and then he asked again, and then finally God said, "Okay, go." So the question is asked, like, what's going on over here? God said, no. You could convince God to change your mind, and the answer is no. The fundamental principle is that the way that a person wants to go, God will let that person go. Meaning that Bilam really, really, really wanted to do this. God said, "Don't do it," but he really, really wanted. So he really wanted. So God said, "Fine, go." So go do it. So meaning his intent, his desires, his will was so strong that God said, "You know what? If this is what you want so much, then go." Meaning we have the free will. So Miriam, going back to Miriam, listen, this is so beautiful. Miriam goes over to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, why did you separate from your wife? But like, God said that I did, what I did was right. And Miriam says, yeah, but you know why God said, maybe because that's what you wanted all along. God didn't want Bilam to go and curse the Jewish people, but Bilam kept on asking, kept on wanting it, so God said, fine, so go. So Miriam is saying the Tanya that she has is like, you wanted to go. If you wanted to go, that's why God said that you should go. You wanted to go and separate from your spouse, and hence God said, fine, if you want to do it, then do it. That was her complaint. That was what she was saying. Meaning that we see over here how strong your will and your desire is. It's something that we don't think about. Like, we think about our thoughts, we think about our speech, we think about our actions, but we kind of, our desires, our will, our wants, our even needs, if you want to say, kind of falls in the waistline. There is an inherent powerful reaction that happens by every desire and every will that you have. It has, like this cosmic effect on the entire world. I can share with you a story. There was once a young rabbi in Eretz Yisrael, and he was young and energetic. He had 4 young kids at home. All of a sudden, he started feeling tired. He started not feeling so well. So he goes over for a doctor. To his doctor. The doctor runs some tests. He says, "Listen, I don't really see anything," but so he sends him to another doctor, another specialist. This other doctor runs some more tests, and he finds something, and he's like, something doesn't sit right with me over here, and he sends him to another doctor. And he goes over to the third doctor, and he starts going through different tests, and they uncover that he has unfortunately the machla. He has an advanced stage of lymphoma, and he starts going from specialist to specialist. Everybody's telling them there's nothing it's too advanced. There's nothing that we can do. So in Eretz Yisrael, there's a famous asken by the name of Rabbi Lemelech Fier, and he is a medical referral expert. Besides having connections, he knows where to go, where the best. So the family meets with him and says, "Listen, maybe you could connect us. It's not looking well." So they go from expert to expert, and every expert tells them the same thing, it doesn't look good. And they went to the final expert, in Israel, and the doctor is reviewing the scans, reviewing the MRI, reviewing all the information. And he says, "Listen," he says, "I don't know what to tell you." He says, "There's no point for treatment anymore. That's all I could say." So the wife is listening. It's the wife, the husband, and and Rabbi Fier, sitting in front by the doctor. And she turns over to the rabbi, and he says, "Listen, can you please set up a meeting with Rabbi Elyasha?" Rabbi Elyasha was the Gadol Adar, at the time. And she says, "Can you set up?" And he's like, "It's Friday afternoon. It's in a few hours at Shabbos, to get to the Gadol Adar's house." She's like, "Listen, it's a life and death situation. Please, I'm begging you. Can you please set up a meeting?" So he said, "Let me make some phone calls." 20 minutes later, they're sitting in the dining room of the Gadol Adar, in Rabbi Elyashiv's dining room. And this Askin, Rabbi Elimelech is going and he's explaining all the details, what this doctor said and what this doctor says on the issue, and going back and forth on all the details. And the rabbi is listening. He's listening. And after they, finish explaining the situation, Rabbi Eliashiv goes and he says, listen, what are you going to do? He says, it seems that there is nothing left to do, medically speaking. So he gave them a bracha, Shabbat for Shalema, and, kind of closed off the meeting. Now, the wife was sitting there silent the entire time. The wife did not say a word the entire time, and all of a sudden, this is the time that she chose to speak up. She goes over and says, Kvod Rav, from what you're telling me, in a few short weeks, I'm going to be an almana. I'm going to be a widow. And there's going to come a time, says, I have 4 young children sitting at home. There's going to come a time, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15 years. And they're going to come over to me and they're going to say, Mommy, did you do everything in your power to make sure that Tati would live, that Daddy would live? And she looks at the rabbi and she says, what am I going to tell them? Did I do everything in my power to make sure that they would have a father or not? And as she's speaking, Rabbi Eliashiv, his demeanor completely changed. And he goes over to Rabbi Elimelech and he says, I want you and I want the husband. I want the patient. I want you to go right now. Don't wait till after Shabbos. I want you to book a flight to America. And he gave them directions. I want you to go to the memorial Sling Caterer. I want you to go to a particular hospital. I want you to go and meet with this doctor, and gave them all the the instructions. They didn't say, no other words. They got up, they took a cab directly to the airport. They took the first flight out. On Shabbos, they flew out because of a pikuach nefesh. It was a life and death situation. And, he goes and he meets with certain doctors. They had some sort of experimental, medication that they were doing. Whatever it was, in about 3 months, this young Rebbe with a new lease in life is flying back home, completely healthy, completely clean. And they go afterwards to Rabbi Eliashiv's, his son-in-law, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and he says, "What's going on with your father? What happened? Why? When they came in, he said, okay, there's nothing left to do." And it is what it is, we're foolish layman, just pass it. And all of a sudden, the wife spoke, and everything changed. Fly now, and not only that, it worked. He became healthy. What changed? So Reb Chaim Kanievsky responded, and he says what changed was that she wasn't willing to give up. She wasn't willing to give up. And when someone doesn't have that, when someone has that desire to be able to continue, to be able to push forward, there is special power, there is special strength that goes on with it, and that is why my father-in-law saw that and he said, "Go right now and get treatment," because he saw with that power, with that rut, that has the ability to go and change everything. Obviously, with the emunah and tefillas and everything else as well. But this has the power that shows you the power of Ratzon, the power of your will has the ability to go and change reality. Rabbi brings down, there was a Moroccan king that was very weak, and it was on his deathbed. The doctor said, you have a few more days left to live, say all your goodbyes. He overheard, as he was laying in his bed, it was 2 ministers that were in the next room, but he overheard them. They were like, we hear that the king's enemies are so happy that the king is going to, is almost dying. He says they have these plans that they're going to go and they're going to take over and they're going to control the kingdom and they're going to overthrow the next, the son, the heir. And they had this whole, and the king is listening to it. The king had such a desire to live, to be able to fight the enemies, that the story goes on that he ended up living for 3 years and he was able to go and accomplish what he wanted to go on to accomplish. Meaning that even though you're in a situation where you're down in the dumps and you're done, you're you can't, that itself could make you done. But if you just get up like a lion and you roar and you just go and be like, you know what, I'm going to fight, I'm going to go, I'm going to continue, that will, that desire, that passion has the ability to go and overcome and give you tremendous amount of blessing and give you the ability to go and accomplish what you want to accomplish. However, we have to also realize there is a flip side to this. And the flip side is that there's also, just like there's goodwill, good desire, there's also twisted Ratzon, let's call it. And we see that also in the story of the Pesach story, where we see where Paro, sends the Jewish people leave, Egypt, and then Paro in Shemais chapter 14 verse 5, Paro goes and says, Maasai sasinu, what do we do? Ki shelachnu es Yisrael me'avdeinu, we sent the Jewish people out from slavery, from serving us. And the question that asks, Paro sent them out? Paro did not want to send them out. There was a plague after a plague after a plague after a plague. There was non-stop plagues until Paro was forced to be the Jewish people were just gonna just go out and leave. So why is Paro all of a sudden, why did we send them out? We had a good thing going for us. We had this free labor. We had this slavery that's going on, and we send it out. How do we understand this? Why would he ever say that? Did he not remember what just happened a few weeks ago? What just happened last week? The death of the firstborn? Does he not remember all the 10 plagues that lasted for a full year of the devastating effect it had on the Egyptians, the economy, and the people? So explains Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that this gives us an insight to human nature. That when you have a conflict between your emotions and your reason, between your heart and your intellect, what's going to win? Right? Let's say there's a conflict. Your heart's saying one thing, your intellect is saying another thing. What usually wins? And we look at this story and we can learn that emotions always overcome. They will always overcome. We look at Paro. Paro had a good thing going for him. They had free labor. And all of a sudden, the Jewish people are traveling. They leave Egypt, but they stop by Baal Tzafon. It was an Egyptian idol. And Paro says, you know what? He says, the Jewish people, the Jewish God had power over all our Egyptian gods, but this Egyptian God, you see, the Jewish people, they stopped over there. So the Egyptian God, Paro could not get into. God did not have the ability to go and overcome. Now he has met his match. A rational person would think like that. A rational person who has seen miracles for a year, 12 months, they've been witnessing miracles. God has been introducing himself to the creation. It's very obvious that God has the unlimited power, everything that he was doing. So why and how did Paro all of a sudden get stopped about the phone? The Jewish people, they stopped. And it must be that this Egyptian idol now has power over it. And furthermore, we'll take it the next step. Paro goes and chases the Jewish people. They get to the sea. And what happens when they get to the sea split for the Jewish people and fell down on the Egyptians. What were Paro's what was Paro's response? It wasn't this is all mine. No, there was Baruch Kadim. There was a strong eastern wind that came in, and that's what caused the sea to split. Meaning that he had a desire. His desire was, we got to get these Jewish people back. We got to get these Jewish people back as slaves. On the flip side, there was what was going on. It was very obvious that God was still in very, very much control. But because Paro's desire was so strong, Paro's emotions were so strong that what he wanted, that he didn't see what was so clear right in front of him. And this is how careful we have to be with this twisted desire that can happen to every single one of us. We can have a certain desire and we think, this is right, this is real, and it's really something coming out of left field. And what's the reason? The reason is that because we have this attraction or this desire to a different, let's call it a different pull. Rabbi Galinsky brings down a story from the Netziv. The Netziv had, was the Rosh Yeshiva Belazhin. And there was a young boy that was in there that was not the smartest and didn't connect. And, he wanted to leave yeshiva life. He wanted to leave Torah life. And he decides that he is checking out. He goes and he throws off anything that has to do with Judaism. He takes off his yarmulke. One day he's walking the street. And he doesn't have a yarmulke, doesn't have anything on. And who is walking around in front of him? His old Rosh Yeshiva, the Netziv. And he was in such a shock, he couldn't cross it. He had to figure out, he had to speak to him. It was too close. So he goes over to the Rosh Yeshiva, and he says, Rabbi, I'm so sorry that you see me like this. He says, but there's a reason why I ended up like this. And Tziv is looking at him, and he says, I had a bunch of questions. I had questions on Judaism. And then this young boy answered. He says, if the Rebbe would answer my questions, I would come back. I only left because I didn't have any answers. So the Tziv looked at him, and he says, you don't have any questions. You wanted to leave. You wanted to leave Judaism. Your question was, how was I going to do it? So you went looking for questions that you weren't even looking for answers. And then, you convinced yourself that everything is fake and everything is made up and everything is blah, blah, blah. And that's why you left. And the rabbi said to him, says, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer all your questions. But you have to have questions. The question is that where are those questions stemming from? Are those questions stemming from the fact that you just want to get out, or are the questions stemming from you really want to understand? And I've had this so many times where I'm speaking to people, and some people are real. They have a real question. You answer them, they'll be like, you know what? Okay, that's good. I'm satisfied. Let me, go back and do everything that I need to do. And then you meet people that they just are nonstop, have questions that are just make no sense. What I know what they do, and I literally sometimes I tell them, some people call me up, be like, oh, I have a questions on God, and they start asking me a question on Navi Anach or something that they never looked at it before, and be like, come on, this is why you don't keep Shabbos? Is because you can't figure out, that's not the reason why you can't get. Yes, it should be answered, but don't think that this is the reason. Because I've asked them. I said, okay, if I answer this question, do you promise me that you're gonna keep Shabbos, keep kosher, put on the film, do everything straight on? And I want to say 9 out of 10 of them will be like, well, if you answer this question, I'll have other questions. So then my response is, so then you don't have. You're not looking for answers. You're looking for questions. Meaning your desire is to be in a certain space. But you feel bad about it because you know that Judaism is real and Torah is real and God is real. So you have to kind of justify it with every so often coming up with a question. Be like, you see, this is why I do what I do. Because obviously it can't be real because look at the questions that I have. And they go to the same website and they look at the same questions and they come to me and be like, it's not even a trick anymore. It's not even come on, get to the next step. Why? This is not we have to be real with ourselves sometimes. These people are not looking for answers. They're looking for questions. And this is what the Nitziv said. The Nitziv said, you're looking for questions. That's your desire. That's your will. So then you're not looking for answers. You're just looking for questions because you're just looking for a way out. And this is something so important. Now, this is a far out case where you have somebody that leaves religion, but we could utilize that in our own lives. How many instances in our lives do we have be like, oh yeah, we do X, Y, and Z because of A, B, and C. But if we take a step back, when we really look at it and we really try to analyze it and be like, does that really justify it? Or do we have a desire? Do we have a want? Do we have a Ratzon? And then everything else tries to push into place because that's what our desire is. And this is what happens when you look at the Haggadah, where you have the Rasha, the wicked son. The wicked son says, "Ma avoda hazos lachem." What is this work that you're doing? What is it? What does that mean? What is it? The Rasha is saying, what are you guys doing? What's the work that you're doing? There's a differentiating factor, explains Rabbi Galinsky, between the Chacham, a wise man, the wise son, and the Rasha, the wicked son. See, the wise son goes and looks at the Torah, looks at stuff, and be like, okay, this is the Torah, this is me. We're not matching up. That means that something has to change. Who's going to change? Me. I have to change. Not the Torah. I have to change. The wicked son says, what is this work for you? Meaning the way the wicked son sees the Torah is that there's the Torah and there's me. And we're not matching. But you know who has to change? The Torah has to change. The Torah is the one that's going to need to change. This is the idea behind the Reform movement. This is the idea behind the conservative movement. This is all these movements that came out, the open orthodoxy, all these things that came out was I want to live my life a certain way, but the Torah doesn't match up. So something has to give. So the righteous people say, I have to change. The wicked people say, no, the Torah has to change. And this is a concept that Rabbi Galinsky explains, that there was a person who entered a hat store, puts on a hat, and he says, listen, I bought this yesterday. Look, it's tight on me. It's making me have a line over here on my forehead. He says, you gave me the wrong size. You got to go and give me a bigger size. You got to correct it. So the hat salesman looks at him and he says, you came to the wrong place. The guy's like, what do you mean? I bought it here yesterday. Like, this is your hat, right? He's like, yeah, but you went to the wrong place. He says, you have to go to the insurance company. And the guy's like, insurance company for a hat? They're not going to cover insurance. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, you have to go to the insurance company. He says, because your head is too big. You got to go under surgery. Go get some sort of orthopedic surgeon to shrink your head so that the hat will fit. Now, obviously, the thing is idiotic, but like, what's the important thing? Is it the head is too big or is the hat too small? And this is the difference between a Rasha and a Chacham. The wicked person says the Torah has to change, meaning, my head is too big. We got to go into some sort of surgery, and that's what has to go on. Or the Chacham goes and says, no, you know what? The hat was too small. Let me go and let me change the hat. The difference is where do you put the priority? Exactly. Where did you put your priorities? Where did you put your values? So thank you, John. Exactly for that. So when we look at this concept. This concept is that you have to go and you have to realize on what's the important aspect, what's the factor that's the core aspect, and what is the secondary aspect. So if we look at ourselves as we are the core aspect and we are the most important and whatever, then nothing's going to go and change. But if we look at we're secondary, then we realize we have the ability to go and change it. And let me explain this, because this is a very important concept. When someone goes into a relationship, let's say, and the relationship is not going well, if they think that they're perfect, and they might be, I'm not even saying the reality, but I'm saying just what they think. If they think that they're perfect, then they're never going to change. But if they think, listen, I'm a human being, maybe I did something wrong. Even if I did something right, maybe it was really something wrong, and maybe it's something that I have to change, then they have the ability to go and improve it. So many people, the reason why they fall short in so many areas in life is that they feel there's no reason for them to change. There's no reason for them to go and improve. And this is a concept that I myself have grown into throughout the years, and be like, wait a minute. I have to improve in this area. I have to improve in this area. Realize that you're not perfect. That you're not God's gift to the world. And of course, you're needed here, and you're very important for the master plan. But we're here for a reason. We're here for a purpose, and we're here to improve. So whether it's a relationship thing, whether it's a Torah thing, whether it's a personality thing, whatever it is, we have areas that we need to improve. And once we connect those dots in our head, then we're like, okay, you know what? Now it's not that the Torah has to change. It's not that the other person in the relationship has to change. It's not that my kids, my wife, my spouse, my blah blah blah. No. It's me. I have to change. And once you have that light bulb, oh wait, yeah. You need to change. All of a sudden, there's a desire that builds up and be like, wait a minute, I want to be a better person. Everybody wants to be a better person. Everyone wants to improve. So all of a sudden, you have the foundation to build the building blocks, to build that Ratzon, to build that desire, to build that will. That'll be like, yes, you want to become a better person. You want to become a more successful person. You want to be a higher being than you were before. Now, the concept of this is when you look at this, I'll give you an example like this. Like sometimes you hear and you listen to a Musar class or a Torah class, and you're like, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with everything that he just said. But it just stays in the theoretical concept. It doesn't go into the practical level. Meaning you could hear inspirational talks. You'd be willing to be like, yeah, I'm listening to it. But it never, there's a disconnect. There's kind of like, the wires are almost touching, but they're like, constantly missing it. Be like, yeah, that makes sense, but we do nothing with that information. We're like, yeah, it's nice in the round. And this is my request, is that you take a minute, like literally 60 seconds, where you close your eyes and you internalize this message, because this message is only going to benefit you. It doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit anybody other than you. And what you have to think about is, do I have to change? Do I have to improve? What do I have to improve? Like, where should I put my desires? Like, all this information can once you let it internalize in you, all of a sudden you could direct it into areas of like, oh yeah, what could I go and what could I, improve in? And I want to take this a step further. And the step further is that this Ratzon, the desire, goes both ways. Meaning that obviously your desire, your will for like how you will grow and how you will improve makes an effect on you. But it also affects on other people. And listen to this fascinating story. There was a Talmid Chacham, a righteous man that was on a bus. And he was traveling to his house. He lived in Tveria. And the bus is traveling through and it stops in Afula. And this older man gets on, long, very distinguished looking, long white beard, a hat, long frock, a long coat. He goes and he sits down right next to this Talmid Chacham. And, say, hi, how are you? They introduce themselves and they start talking and learning. They talk about the parsha, they talk about some halacha, and as they're, talking and learning, which is, by the way, just like a fascinating thing. Do you understand this? Like, two people, random people, are sitting on the bus and they just learn together. They're just like, let's learn. And they're talking and learning. And all of a sudden, the older man goes over to the younger man and says, what do you do? What do you do for a living? And the younger man, it was a young rabbi, and he says, I work with kids at risk, kids that are, not connected to Torah and Judaism. I try to bring them, closer to Torah and Judaism. And this rabbi is stroking his beard. He hears what he says, and he's like silent for like a few moments. And he goes after a few moments, and he says, I didn't always look like this. He says, when I was younger, he says, his parents came from, escaped the Holocaust, and they didn't have the energy to to go and deal with it. He was a more energetic kid, more of a wilder kid. And he was, kind of slowly going off let's call it off the path. And, he ended up, even before Bar Mitzvah, he said if he would continue his trajectory, he would have been in a life of crime without a doubt. He says, but, when he was a teenager, he says Shabbos, he didn't keep Shabbos, he didn't keep kosher, he didn't keep anything. And what was the entertainment on Shabbos, on Saturday, was he would play soccer. It was in Israel. Soccer was the national sport. He would go and he'd play soccer. One Saturday afternoon, he is playing, soccer with his friends. And right behind the field was a synagogue, was a shul. And he's playing soccer, and as he is, he wants to hit a goal, and he kicks it very hard, and more power than he realized, and the ball flew right over the fence, and as it was flying in the air, there was a young rabbi that was leaving the shul, and as he opens the door, he starts walking out, the ball hits him right in his hat, knocks his hat on the floor, and, discombobulates him. And the boys, non-religious, secular teenage boys, they thought this was the funniest thing they've ever seen. And they were rolling on the floor. So this old man is saying a story. He says, I was one of those boys. I walked over with my strut, I got my rhythm going on over there. Walk over to get the ball back. And I go over. It was like a young rabbi, and I go and and I say, Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, and the rabbi responds. He says, so this young teenager says, you want to come play with us, or are you going to go make kiddush, at your house? So the rabbi responds and says, where are your parents? And this, young teenage boy says he lied. He says, parents are dead, not alive. So the rabbi said, he says, why don't you come to my house? Let me make kiddush for you. Let me give you something. So there's a teenage boy was playing a game right now. But, it was like a chutzpahdik, style kid. He says, you know what? Get this way. Yeah, let me come. So he goes over to his friends. He gives them a ciao, a goodbye. And he starts walking behind this rabbi, walking with all his swagger, making fun of the rabbi. The rabbi brings him to his house, small little house, makes kiddush for him, and he goes over to the boy and says, are you hungry? And this teenager is like, I am starving. Yeah. So he starts feeding the boy. And the boy finishes the entire plate, and he gives him another plate, and he finishes the entire plate. During this whole time, he sees the rabbi, and the rabbi said they didn't eat anything, and he only later he realizes the reason why he didn't eat anything was because this boy ate all their portions. And the rabbi looks at him and he says, "Listen, are you tired? Maybe you want to take a nap?" And he says, after such a meal, I'm exhausted. So the rabbi takes him into the room and he says, listen, he says, why don't you go take a nap over here in the bed? He makes the bed for him and he goes and he sleeps. He falls asleep. He wakes up. Shabbos is already over. And he comes out of his room and the rabbi's sitting over there in the dining room and he says, how are you? Well rested? Yeah, well, very well rested. He says, what's your plans for tonight? So the boy looks at the rabbi and he says, probably going to go to the movies. And the rabbi says, you're going to go to the movies? Says, do you have money? Do you need money for that? They're like, how much does it cost? So he says, this is before there was shkalim, and he says it's about 1.5 liras. And the rabbi goes over to his wallet, takes that 1.5 liras and says, here, take it. And the boy is very confused that a rabbi is giving him money to go to the movie. He says, okay, thank you. And the rabbi says, you'll come back next week? It'll be like a free meal, a nice rest, money. Yeah, why not? He says, and this older rabbi is saying, when I was a teenage boy, he says, I kept on coming back. I would go over there, the rabbi would give me food, I would be able to take a nap, and every so often he would schmooze with me, he would talk to me, he would give me some musar, we would learn a little bit of chumash, learn a little bit of this, learn a little bit of that. And later I found out that this rabbi was doing it to dozens of children, dozens of teenage boys, helping them, bring them in, giving them food, giving them, inspirational talks. This is what the rabbi did. And go fast forward a few years. Says I was speaking to the rabbi. The rabbi said, maybe you want to go to yeshiva. I'll take care of it. Obviously, you are. And I said, fine. Slowly warmed up to this concept. I ended up going to yeshiva. And it says when I went to yeshiva, I ended up getting smicha. And he says not only did I end up getting smicha, I ended up becoming a dayan. And this older man is telling this young rabbi, he says, I went from being on the streets to being a dayan and a bezdin. He says very shortly I'm retiring from being a dayan. And, this rabbi, he married me off. He, not only that, he married my children off. He walked us down the aisle. He was a sandik and the bris for my grandchildren. And, he says, this rabbi changed my life. And this older man is looking at this younger rabbi and says, the reason why I'm telling you this story right now is that you're dealing with kids at risk. He says, I was a kid at risk. Now I'm a dayan. Now I'm a judge in a court. He says, never give up on your children. Never give up on those kids that you're working on, because you never know where they're going to reach. And as this rabbi is finishing off this story, his stop comes. So he gets up and he starts walking out. And this young rabbi stops and says, wait. He says, this rabbi that you're talking about, I've never heard of this. Maybe I know him. What's his name? So this older man, as he's stepping off the bus, smiles at him. Says, my rabbi, his name is Chacham Ovadia Yosef. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. He was the chief rabbi of the Sephardic Jewry. He was the biggest rabbi in Israel. And what was he busy with? He was busy with helping, some other, kid that's sitting and playing soccer on Shabbos, in the middle of the street and making fun of it. And you look at this. What was the desire of this kid? You think this kid, when he was playing soccer on Shabbos, was like, yeah, one day I'm going to become a dayan. One day I'm going to become a big rabbi. No. But the desire of the rabbi was, no, you're going to be successful. You're going to succeed. And I'm going to give you love. And the rabbi, Chacham Ovadia Yosef, played the long game. He didn't play the short game. Oh, let me have a conversation with you. If it doesn't work out, then well, okay, fine. It is what it is. No, he played the long game. He gave them he gave them his time. He gave them his money. He gave them everything. And look at what came out. The desire of the rabbi was that this kid should be successful, and this kid became very, very successful. The desire that we have doesn't only affect us, meaning that you have a Ratzon, you have a will for something, it affects other people as well. You have the ability to affect your children, you have the ability to affect your friends, you have the ability to affect some random stranger. That's the power of Ratzon. That is the power of will, and that is the power of the desire. We'll finish off with, getting a little bit late, we'll finish off with kind of maybe one last story, that there was a young boy that had a very hard time learning. Didn't understand it. He tried, opened up, made no sense to him. He was trying, one of the kids really, really tried very hard. And he is trying, it's not working. The rabbi felt so bad. Be like, you know what? I'm going to tutor him for free. After school, the rabbi sat with the student. He saw how much he wanted. It just didn't click in. And the rabbi sat with him and explained to him and it just didn't go in. It just didn't work. So the rabbi didn't know what to do. He calls up, gets a meeting with Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, the good old Dar. Goes in and he meets with the Reb Chaim and he says, listen, this is the situation. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky looks at him and he says, listen, he says, you have to go and you have to make sure that you pray, that you daven for success and learning with a minyan, he added. And the boy was sitting over there. He was very embarrassed. He says, you know what? He says, I'm not so careful. I'm not so careful with, with a minyan, but I'm going to be careful from now on. Fast forward a few months. And it was Bein Hazmanim, it was during the break, and the kids, his friends decided that they're going to go on, in vacation. I believe they went to Netanya. And they go to Netanya, they have a good time, and they come back, 11 o'clock at night. They were sunburned, they were exhausted, and, he's sitting over there, he's talking to his parents, everything is nice, he's talking about what they did, and, he's recapping for them, and then he's like, I'm exhausted, I'm going into bed. And he gets into bed, and he's about to pass out, and then he realizes he did not daven Ma'ariv. So the question is, does he get up and just daven Ma'ariv by himself? Does he go, it's 11 o'clock at night? Where is he going to go and find a minyan at 11 o'clock at night, even though he lived in Yerushalayim, in his area, there was no, there was no minyanim. So he's going back and forth and says, you know what? No. I went to the Gadol Dar. I went to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. And he said that I have to be careful in going davening with a minyan and making sure that I daven, that I should be able to have successful learning. I'm going to do it. He gets up, gets dressed, goes out, tries to hitch a ride. There's one place in Yerushalayim that you're going to find the minyan, and that is Zichron Moshe. He says, I'm going to go and hitch a ride to Zichron Moshe. He's sitting over there. It's already almost 12 o'clock at night. There's nobody driving over there. Nobody's picking him up. He decides, I'm going to start walking. It was a really long walk. He starts walking. All of a sudden, someone pulls up and says, where are you off to? Where are you going to? He says, I need to go to Zichron Moshe. He says, come, I'll give you a hitch. He goes and he gets a hitch. He gets to Zichron Moshe at 1:30 in the morning. He gets over there at 1:30 in the morning, and there's 4 people waiting for a minyan for Ma'ariv. And he's sitting over there. He says, okay, it's going to happen. 1:30 in the morning, 4 people. He's the 5th person. We're halfway there. But it's 2 o'clock, it's 2:30, it's 3 o'clock, people are slowly streaming in. People, all of a sudden, suddenly, a few of the people are like, listen, it's not going to happen, I'm going home, I'm going to have to go home. And this young boy begs them, says, no, please, just give a few more minutes, maybe someone's going to come. Finally, a little bit after 3, the 10th person walks in, and they start davening Ma'ariv. And for some reason, whether it's the exhaustion, whether it was the test that he just passed, this boy, he gets a Shemona Esrei and he starts davening, and all of a sudden it's like the gate of tears that was blocking his emotion, his eyes just opened up, and he just started bawling and crying and praying to God, please let me understand your Torah. He says, I'm not that smart. I can't comprehend. I'm not there yet. I can't. Please give me the power, give me the ability to go and understand it. And he's sitting over there and he's crying and he's davening and he's davening. By the time that he finishes davening Shemona Esrei, he opens up his eyes. It was a full hour. He was sitting there. It was after 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was gone. And he finishes davening over there and he's thinking, he says, wait a minute. He says, I've never had such a good prayer, such a good davening. He says, I'm going to go home. It's almost Vasikin. It's almost time for Shacharis. He says, let me sit around. Let me wait over here. Let me already daven Shachar. He had like this like boost of energy that just like came in. And he decides he's going to stick around for Shacharis. So he goes and he opens up, he goes over to the Sfarim Shank, he takes out a Gemara that he was learning, opens up a Gemara, figures, let me try. He opens up the Gemara and something miraculous happens. What he didn't understand for years, all of a sudden he started reading the Gemara and it just made sense. It just clicked. He was able to understand the words. He was able to understand what this rabbi was saying and what this rabbi was saying. And he was able to understand the machlok. He was like, it was as if a world that has been closed off to him just opened up. And he was in such a euphoric stage that he just couldn't stop. And he was learning for an hour, for 2 hours. Finally, people came in for Shacharis. He's like, let me daven Shacharis. He goes and he davens Shacharis. He borrows someone else's tefillin. He puts on tefillin. He davens Shacharis. And he was so energized for this. He didn't go home. He didn't sleep the entire night. He goes back. He opens the Gemara and he starts reading it. And he starts going in. And it's so beautiful. It's so big. Like, it's like all of a sudden everything is just like opened up to him. And it comes like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he decides he has to get ready for Shabbos. So he makes his way, he takes a bus back to his house. He goes over to his house, and his parents are like, what happened? What's going on? And he starts explaining to them everything that happened. He says, you don't understand, because of this, because I needed to go. And I went to the shul, and I opened up the Gemara, and all of a sudden, it just made sense. And the parents were like, euphoric. I was like, it's amazing. It's so unbelievable. Maybe you want to go to rest before Shabbos. And he's like, rest? Like, what are you talking about? He says, he goes into his room, he opens up a Gemara, and he starts learning until Shabbos. And then Shabbos comes, and listen to this story. This is crazy. He opens up the Gemara until Shabbos. Shabbos comes, his parents says, okay, you're going to come to shul. He goes to shul, eats the meal. His parents are like, you're probably exhausted. You haven't slept in, 24 hours. You got to go to sleep. He said, yeah, I'll go to sleep. I just want to learn a little bit more. I've never understood anything before. I just need to learn a little bit more. He ends up learning the entire night until Friday morning. That's 2 full nights that he stayed up and he was learning, and just everything was just clicking. And finally, the father comes in and says, you're still up? It's like, what's going on? He's like, I stayed up all night. They go to daven Shacharis. They eat the meal, and he goes back to learning. He didn't even go to sleep Friday Shabbos afternoon. Finally, only after Motzei Shabbos, he ends up going to sleep. Fast forward a year later. A year goes by, and this boy goes to visit his Rabbi that kind of helped him and tutored him for free and tried to go and connect him. And he goes over to the Rabbi, he goes over to his house, rings a bell, there he opens up, he says, oh, so nice to see you, how's everything, how's your new shir, He says, yeah, Baruch Hashem, I'm able to understand, I'm able to, comprehend, but it says, I wanted to give you something, and he gives him this booklet. It's a booklet that was, printed on, think about it if you go to Staples and you print it, he printed out a booklet, and the Rabbi is opening it up, and he starts flipping through it, and he sees it's on a Gemara, and he goes and he starts like skimming through it. He sees this is it's very well written. It's known by it seems like a distinguished scholar was really put his heart and soul into it. So the Rebbe closes up and he looks in the front where you can see who's the author. And he doesn't see anybody, so he flips them to the first page, and it's like, who's, and he's sitting this entire time, he's reading over it, his student is right over there, and he's thinking, he says, wow, he says, look how amazing my student has gotten, that he knows to buy such a good book, such a good sefer, so deep, this is unbelievable. So he goes over to his student, and he says, I'm looking to see, first of all, I'm very impressed that you picked up this really good sefer. I see, I'm looking at all, the back and forth over here. Somebody was very smart, very well written, very well versed in Torah, and the depths of it was able to put this in here. But I see there's no author over here. Do you by any chance know who this author is? And the student is looking at him and he says, yeah. He says, it was me. No, I wrote it. That's why I'm bringing it to you. And the Rebbe looks at him and he stops for a second and says, a year ago, this kid could not read, could not understand the Gemara. Now he wrote a book that's on a level of a massive rabbi. That is the power of Ratzon. That is the power of will. If you have a desire, if you have a will, guess what? That itself gives it a power. You want to be an amazing person? If that's really your desire, if that's really your will, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you the power to be able to go and be able to accomplish that. You have the desire to be the best spouse possible, you will get that. You have the desire to be the best parent possible, you will. It all depends on your desire, and that is the lesson of Pesach. The lesson of Pesach is you want to get out. We're all going through whatever it is that we're going through. You want to get out, you have to have those two things, says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus. The emunah that you have the ability to do it, and the Ratzon. You have to have that desire, that will. And this, let me take it one step further, and then we'll wrap it up. I apologize, it's a little bit late. We say in Ashrei, few times a day we say Pesach Yadecha umazbiya lechochai Ratzon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens up his hand and satisfies everyone according to their need. Now the question that you can ask, be like, you're satisfied, everybody, whatever you daven for, whatever you want, you get. Did you get everything that you asked for? Every single one of us, we ask for certain things. Did we get everything that we asked for it? Most of us will say some yes, some no. So what happened? Wait a minute. If we're saying over here, Pesach Yadecha umazbiya, HaKadosh Baruch Hu satisfied everybody's need. Where's everybody's need? Everybody's need is not satisfied. Listen to this fascinating interpretation that I heard from Rabbi Daniel Gladstein, and that is, let's say a king comes into your town, and he says, "I'm giving every single person in here $100,000 gift." And there's one person that owed the king $100,000. So the king goes over to this person and says, "Listen, you owe me $100,000. I'm not going to give you $100,000. We'll just call it even. I'll wipe off your debt." You look at this person. Did this person get anything? Did this person, succeed at anything? And the answer is, yeah. Even though doesn't have anything in his bank account, but he wiped off the debt that he has for $100,000. When we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for something, and we're praying for it, and we don't get it, that's a kapara. That's wiping off a debt. What's Yisurim? Yisurim is suffering that we go through, is if you stick your hand in your pocket and you want to take out a particular coin, and you take out a different coin, that counts as suffering. What does that mean that it counts as suffering? Meaning that erases something that you have in your debt account that you have to go and pay HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for whatever it is. We're not going to get into it. It doesn't matter. The point is that suffering erases your debt that you owe to God. So when you pray for something and you don't get it or didn't get it yet, that in itself is suffering. That suffering wipes your debt away. So that's why yes, God answers everybody, but some people, they have a big debt. So God takes it off the debt. That's the power of Ratzon. That's the power of your will. Your will, your desire, your wants, your needs. This has a tremendous effect on everything. We'll finish off with one story, really one story, that there was once this drunk, and this drunk would, sell, he was like a good drunk. And what I mean by good drunk, he was very meticulous about being drunk every single night. And to the point, that it came to was that he went and he would kind of... it's his furniture, but he would take his own furniture, sell it, just so that he would be able to buy alcohol. And his wife and his kids were like, all right, this is getting out of control over here. His dad is selling the bed frames, the beds, the couches, the chairs, buying it, selling it, just to be able to get it. And they figured they got to do something about it. So this guy is a deadbeat drunk. We got to get rid of it. So they decide what they're going to do. Is that there was an open grave in the cemetery. It's very morbid, turn of events. And so he'll get drunk. We'll just dump him there. Let it be somebody else's problem. He'll go and just causing issues. So they figure they put him in the cemetery. They put him over there. He'll sober up. He'll realize he hit rock bottom. It's time to make his way back. they go and they bring him into the cemetery when he's passed out drunk, and they put him into this open grave. Obviously they don't cover it, open grave, and be like, let him wake up and be like realize he has to change his his path. And during this time when he was passed out drunk, there was an army that was passing through, and this army that was passing through all of a sudden got a message that another army, they had to go and fight, and they were being chased after, and they have to really throw off everything, they have to travel lightweight. So the army would travel with obviously guns and munitions that they would need, but then they had other things. They had food that they need, but then they had alcohol that they needed to relax and check out a little bit. Says that they didn't need. They needed to really unload some weight. And they were passing through the cemetery, and they'd be like, what? We got to get rid of all this alcohol. We can't travel. This is another army chasing us. We have this battle. We can't be doing this with all this stuff. So they find an open space, which happened to be a grave. It was dark, and they start putting in, all their bottles in this, in this grave. Meanwhile, they dump everything and they leave. And this father, that's this drunk, wakes up in the morning, and he turns around and he sees that he's in a grave. But then he looks, closer, and he sees there's hundreds of bottles all over him of the best scotch, the best tequila, the best rum, all the best alcohol, and be like, is this heaven? I feel like I'm in heaven. And he's like, this is unbelievable. So he wakes up, he drinks, he passes out. He wakes up, he drinks, he passes out. It goes through a cycle. 3-4 days pass, and his children's, who dumped him in the cemetery, hoping that he would have a wake up call, decide to be like, let's go check on Dad. Let's see how he's doing. They go and they travel into the cemetery. They see he's sitting over there in his grave. He's so relaxed. He has these hundreds of bottles all around. He put it very nicely over here, and he's drinking and he's drunk and he's passing out. And then they came to realize, be like, he's gonna get his alcohol one way or another. He's not hitting rock bottom. Obviously, God wants him for whatever reason to be able to have his alcohol, and so they decided that they're gonna go and they're gonna take turns taking care of the father every single day of the week, a different child. And this is the story that the Medrash says. And you look at this and be like, what's the lesson of the story? That you should drink every day? You throw your father into a cemetery? What is the practical lesson? What is the Torah teaching us with this lesson? And the answer is that if a person has the desire that they want to drink, God will give you that opportunity. You have the desire, you want to be a deadbeat, you will get that. You have the desire, you want to be an amazing person, you will get that. God gives you what you desire. And this is what the Gemara Makos tells us. What's your desire? Your desire has a strong effect on what's going to be your outcome of your life. You have a desire to be successful, you have a desire to be an amazing person, or you have a desire to be just wallow in your misery and wallow in your depression or whatever it is that's going on. Both of those things, you have all these people and you see, you look at them and you I see it, I speak to them. Be like, one person has a desire to be successful and they become successful. You have another person's desires, just wants to check out in life. And again, we don't judge them. We're not blaming anybody. But you know what? They end up checking out in life. But that's the power of the desire. That's the power of the Ratzon. And when we look at, and we're coming to Pesach, we're coming to the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And Chazal tell us, just like God took us out of Egypt so many years ago, 3,300 years ago, so too God will take you out of your Egypt. But you need to have those same two conditions, says Reb Shimshon Pincus, that they needed to have for that 20% that it got out. And what are those two conditions? Number one, emunah, and number two, Ratzon. You have to have the desire. You have to want it. You want something strong enough, that's what you're going to get. And that's what the Baal Tanya tells us, that a person's essence, your real essence, that's revealed in your Ratzon. That's revealed in your desire. What do you want? What do you really want? And we could change what we want. Do you want to just chill out and relax? Do you want to be successful? Do you want to be a good Jew? Do you want to be some people will be like, I'm not holding there yet. And yeah, I get it, but do you want to be holding there yet? Do you want to be there? Do you want to be a person that davens every single day? Do you want to be a person that learns every single day? Do you want to be a person that's modest every single day? Like, where are you holding in your desires and your want? If you're able to tap into that, and that's the lesson that I want to share with everybody over here on Pesach. Tap into your desire. Tap into your essence. Your essence might not be on the right trajectory, but you could go and you can change it. Change your Ratzon, change your desire. Because whatever your Ratzon is, whatever your desire is, so the bracha that I have for everybody is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, so many years ago, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take out of each and every single one of us, or whatever we're dealing with. And the only thing that God asks of us is have the desire and have the belief that you have the ability to be able to do it, obviously with God's help. We'll say Kapitel Tehillim, and then we'll close it off. We'll say Kapitel, as usual, Kuf Lamin for Klal Yisrael. Shira Malais Mima Makim Karsicha Adonai Adonai Shem Bekoili Tianas Necha Kashuv Vaisakol Tachanunai Ema Vainestish Maria Adonai Mi Amoid Kim Chaslicha Leman Tivarei Kivisi Adonai Kif So Nafshi Belidvarei Chalti Nafshi La Adonai Mishomrim La Beker Shomrim La Beker Yachel Yisrael La Adonai Kim Adonai Yachased Varbe Maifadus Behu Yiftais Yisrael Mikol Avanesav Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanusunim Batzara Vashivya Im Debain Bayam Uvein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachim Aleim V'Yetzias Mitzrayim Le'Rvacha Me'Afela Le'Ara Mishibud Le'Geula Hashtabagala Bizman Kariv V'Nemar Amen.